Namaskar. Let's learn about the remedy Natrum Muriaticum from Dr. N.M. Chaudhary's Materia Medica. And as you know, Dr. N.M. Chaudhary always starts his explanation of any remedy with first talking about the source of the remedy. And the source of Natrum Muriaticum is nothing but NaCl or common table salt. So the same substance which we ingest every day. Let's learn what are the symptoms that this substance is capable of producing after getting potentized. Started talking about the source of natramure, which is NaCl, the common table salt, and common table salt acts on its action is actually first of all to increase the flavor of food, and it acts on us to increase the gastric juices, increase the quality as well as quantity of gastric juices. That is what we saw in the very start of the video. And then we also saw that people living on the seashore have a list of, can suffer from a list of things like anemia. They can have a mapped tongue, which is also a characteristic symptom of natramure. They have profuse perspiration, right? Swelling of gums, ulcer of gums, all of that is also present. Mapped tongue. Okay, then we went on to talk about the emaciation of natramure, which is actually something that natramure is greatly known for. Emaciation. So there is emaciation, there is loss of flesh, no matter how much ever they eat. This loss of flesh is majorly seen on the neck, and the neck is very thin, and it looks as if the pendulous abdomen is hanged on through a strip of a throat, and there's a huge head on the throat, which the body cannot actually take on. It's like unsymmetrical proportion is there. So that's the situation. The lips are swollen, there's brownish spots all over the body, there's yellowish complexion because they're pale, they're anemic, and because of a lot of anemia you'll obviously be prostrated, they're very weak. They have this greasy kind of a skin. They have dirty leaden hue merging into the earthly yellow complexion that they have. Okay, they also have a bald head. Okay, so these are the symptoms. These are the emaciation related symptoms, or you can also think of it like constitution related symptoms of natramure. Moving ahead, we talked about the sweat and the thirst of this remedy. The sweat is profuse and the thirst is also profuse. Both are profuse. And then we talked about the mind related symptoms, the mental condition of this remedy, in which we talked about the irritability which they have, great irritability that they have. Then we talked about the lacrimal disposition of this remedy. This remedy has this disposition to weep a lot. They will weep constantly without any reason also, and consolation also aggravates them. This is an important point. Then we talked about the hypochondriacal mood also. Hypochondriacal mood we talked about how they will, recollect the past disagreeable thoughts or occurrences, and they will brood over it again, and finally will again be sad because of that. Then we also saw about how they are awkward, like Apis and Bovista. They will drop things here and there. They will, break things, and the whole situation is there. And in hypochondriacal mood, another one important point we saw was that this whole situation is more when they are constipated, is actually accompanied by constipation and palpitation. They are awkward. And then the fifth or the last point was related to the memory. These people have kind of impairment of the memory, and they do not want to work, and when they are forced to work they will make mistakes in the work, they will be confused, or they will have again this loss of memory which will be evident, which will be very easily seen. That's there. Then we talked about the eyes, because natramure has a great action on eyes, and we saw that these patients especially have the weakness of muscles of eye, right? And especially the muscles were recti muscles. So this is the inferior recti, the lateral recti, and the superior recti, and there will be weakness in these, leading to asthenopia. The eyes will have to strain a lot. Then vision is obscure, vision is gone down, the objects will look dim, and they will feel that as if they are seeing through a veil or a gauze. That will be the situation. The leads are swollen, mucopurulent discharge is there. The leads are so swollen that they will look like raw beef. Talked about the chemosis, meaning the conjunctiva getting inflamed because of an allergic kind of reaction is there. There is intense lacrimation in these patients, meaning there's a lot of tears dropping from the eyes even when they're not crying. So there's intense lacrimation in these patients. We also saw that there's sensation of sand in the eye, Yeah. Then we talked about the action of natrium on the mucous membranes, where we saw that it causes catarrhal kind of inflammation, and we saw that it leads to a lot of fluent coryza. There's also sneezing, there's loss of taste, there's a lot of loss of smell, and there's redness of tonsils. There's a sensation of plug in throat, right? Along with that, you will have the thirst of the remedy, and you'll also have the tongue of the remedy most of the times present. Okay, these were about the eye, the mucous membrane related symptoms that we saw. Then we talked about the finally about the urinary system, in which we talked about the weakness of bladder that they have, which will again lead to incontinence, or opposite, they can also be difficulty to urinate. So how much ever the wait for the urine to pass and strain for the urine to pass, the urine is not coming out. And during the prolapse, there's increased desire to urinate. And one thing we forgot while talking about or revising is the headache of this remedy. So there's a very, very important thing, that there's headache in this remedy. The aura has blindness like many other remedies, which included calibi, lacdef, iris, gelsemium. Okay, we saw that there's a sensation as if a lot of hammers, 1,000 hammers are knocking onto the head. The modalities were that the headache lasts from morning till evening, and periodical headache is also there. During the headaches, they have a throbbing kind of a pain. The headaches are so violent that they will become maniacal and might even speak in a blasphemous language, right? The tongue becomes dry, especially during the headache. Dry tongue, which will cling to the roof of the mouth, and intermittent pulse will be there. So this is what we learned when we talked about the remedy Natrum Muriaticum, the emaciation and the whole situation. The dyspepsia of this remedy, the action of this remedy on digestive system, and we saw that there is this distress that they feel in the stomach, which is very characteristic, very interestingly actually ameliorated by tightening of clothes. Okay, tightening of clothes is making them feel better, and it starts after eating, right? It started after eating, and it is ameliorated by tightening of clothes. Along with that, there is fatigue, weariness, excessive hunger, which also stays in spite of emaciation. Another very characteristic thing, very actually interesting thing that we saw, was the longing that they had for bitter things, which is very uncommon. Nobody likes bitter taste. It is not it's not something that we crave for. Okay, so there's longing for bitter things in these patients, aversion to meat, bread and coffee. Then we also saw the obstinate constipation that they have. In obstinate constipation, we saw that these patients have stools which are very, very hard and dry, and they crumble out because they're so hard and dry. Okay, and the secretion in the guts is not enough, and that is why this is taking place. Now, if the stools are very hard, if there's constipation, you are very likely to get fissure in your anus, and that fissure will lead to bleeding and smarting in natrium. Smarting is a kind of burning like sensation. So the smarting happens after defecation, after going to stools. The tongue of natrium, as we have many times discussed in part 1 also, is mapped kind of tongue. And it is also seen in other remedies, like we talked about taraxacum. It is also seen in taraxacum. It is also seen in nitric acid. It is also seen in lachesis, murk and arsenic. But it is very characteristically found in natrium. Okay, this was about the digestive system that we discussed. Then we went on to talk about a little bit about the male related symptoms of this remedy, in which we talked about impotency that develops because there's excess of masturbation, excess of sexual, whatever sexual excess they, it will give rise to impotency, will give rise to sexual debility. Okay, now this can also give rise to great physical weakness, and it may also go on to not only weakness but paralysis because of sexual excess. So paralysis may also take place because of that reason. Okay, then along with this kind of a sexual debility, they also along with it have backache. Backache also accompanies like prolapse. So there are many things that backache may accompany. Okay, so backache is there. Then there can be night sweats that these patients have. They can be constipation, weakness of legs, palpitation. Now you've also seen that constipation and palpitation was present along with the hypochondriacal mood that these patients have in the part 1 of Natrum. Okay, so this is also present along with the hypochondriacal mood. Now we see that this is also present along with the sexual debility. Then we also saw the chronic gonorrhea that these patients have, and in chronic gonorrhea these patients have kind of slimy transparent mucus as discharge, right? And they have a very strong smell which is very characteristic. Okay, and this gives smiley transparent things gives them itching and burning. Then we went on to talk about the female related symptoms of Natrum urine, which we first talked about the menses. Menses were too early, too profuse, and will last too long. We saw them, and this obviously will make their patients anemic, right? And what we saw about before menses, there was few symptoms, and we saw that there were during menses there were few symptoms, and there were some few symptoms after menses. So before menses, patients tend to get anxious and sad, and they are also irritable. During menses, we saw headache, and also saw this headache during after menses. So both times the headache was present. Again, along with this, they were anxious, they were sad, and they had this fluttering of heart. So again, kind of palpitation. So this palpitation, constipation, backache are concomitants for this remedy. So it will be found many times, right? Then we have headache after, and leukorrhea, which is especially green or transparent after menses. Menstrual blood is dark, and it flows day and night because there is profuse flow. Then also there we saw that there is loss of sexual desire in females also, and that is because of dryness of vagina. Okay, dryness of vagina. Then we went on to talk about the prolapse of uterus, and we saw this diagram when we talked about it. Okay, so there's prolapse of uterus in these patients, which is especially comes they have this feeling every morning that the uterus will come down. So there is bearing down feeling every morning, and therefore they tend to sit. They want to sit. Okay, to prevent the prolapse. And along with this prolapse of uterus, they also have backache, and the backache is so much that they want to lie down, or press a pillow against it. Okay, sleep may we saw that these patients have very very vivid dreams which they will believe to be true. The most common and very famous dream is of the robbers, and they will wake up and search their whole house first because they think that these robbers must have taken something which was actually a dream. Okay, then we went on to talk about the skin related symptoms, in which we saw that there is eczema, there can be vesicular eruptions, that is tetters, which is also called as tetters. There can be shingles, there can be rashes, etc. It was nothing very characteristic. And then we finally talked about the very very characteristic fever of this remedy. Okay, in the fever we saw there are 4 chief points. In the 4 chief points, the first one was the intensity of chill, right? Second, we saw that there is headache which is unbearable, bursting, hammering headache. Third, we saw that there is very very great thirst, and fourth, we saw that there is very great perspiration. The chill is so much that they fear that it will set in. It will turn their lips and their nails blue, It will also start from extremities, fingers, toes, and then spreads to small of back. In headache, we saw that it is there in all the stages. In chill, it will be so violent that the patient will faint. In heat, it will again be hammering and stupefies the patient. And in sweat also the headache is present. Thirst and perspiration. Perspiration, all symptoms will get better except the headache. So in between the chill and the heat stage, you have vomiting of bile like eupatorium perf. Fever blisters may be there over the lips. Time of paroxysm is 10 to 11 a.m. And natrum fevers are mostly malarial fevers found in the marshy districts. So this was all about natrum that we discussed today. Okay, I hope you go back and read this remedy from various different Materia Medicas and N.M. Chaudhary obviously. Okay, so bye bye.